All right, I saw a few additional names to join the board today, so thank you for joining us, guys. I have 10:01 on the clock, so why don't we get started? Everyone's time is precious, and we have a lot of great content to cover today, so let's dive in. Um, First of all, I just want to say hi to everyone. My name is Shannon Riley. I really want to thank you for joining me today. Just to give you a little idea of who I am, well, I've spent about 25 years leading marketing and project management and operational strategy across industries like higher education, healthcare, agencies, and all kinds of enterprise organizations. And my work really has been focusing on helping teams work smarter, move faster, and really manage this whole growing complexity of modern work. And I've led some high performing teams. I've advised Fortune 200 companies, and I've also guided some really large scale process transformations across thousands of different users. And a major part of my career has really been helping organizations move from scattered systems and siloed processes to really environments where they have clarity and confidence and visibility that they need to deliver some real high quality work without getting burned out. And everything that I'm going to share with you today comes from real conversations with PMOs, marketing operations teams, creative groups, enrollment teams, and cross-functional project leaders who are probably facing some very similar challenges that you're facing as well. And so today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest issues that teams face every year, and that's building goals that actually work in the real world. And very too often, goals look really great on paper, but they're not connected to real workload or capacity or even how work truly moves through the organization. And so this session is designed to change that. I'm going to walk you through a visibility driven approach to setting some realistic, achievable goals that really will support your team and hopefully earn your leadership's confidence. And we're going to break this down into some common blockers. We'll look at some of the frameworks of high performing teams and what they use. And then we'll talk about some of how those tools like Workzone can help you plan with clarity. So with that being said, next slide, please, Connor. Before we get started, we're going to have some really good news for you today. There's going to be a bonus. So 5 lucky attendees today are going to receive a $100 Amazon gift card at the end of this webinar. What a great way to start off the holidays, right? Now, here's the kicker. You must stay through the full session and be present when we announce the winners at the end to claim your prize. So stick around. We got some great content, and hopefully at the end, I'll be giving one of you lucky winners a $100 Amazon gift card. So let's dig in and get started. Next slide, please. So before we dive in, I want to always just kind of start with a quick poll. And we want to see kind of who's handled kind of do more with less goal for 2026. You know, most of the teams that I've worked with are always asked to do things like increase output or move faster without fully understanding whether the team has the systems or the time or the capacity to support those expectations. So I'm going to pause for a second. If you guys wouldn't mind, Connor's going to flash a poll here. Let's take a look at the results and see what we get back. A very common response. Yes, always expected to deliver more. Absolutely. That seems to always be the winner in these cases. 79% of you and over half of the attendees today are saying the same thing. So I think that's a very common answer that we get for this type of a question. So thank you for participating. It kind of gives me an idea of where we're at today. And really, you know, many teams operate in what I like to call this visibility poverty. And, you know, they're producing significant work, but they cannot really easily measure it or show where the capacity is already maxed out. So without that visibility, you know, it really becomes difficult to push back and advocate or really build some of those goals that reflect reality. So this poll that you all responded to really is going to set the foundation for our conversation today, because meaningful goals really require kind of understanding that full picture of what's happening within your workflow. Next, please. Next slide, please, Connor. There we go. So I want to start with two quick stories that illustrate the blind spot problem. You know, a marketing director at a really large healthcare system told me once that every time their COO asked for a campaign update, she needed hours and hours to gather all of that information that was scattered across things like emails and spreadsheets and different chats. And then another leader that I spoke to in higher education completed more than 250 projects in a year, but their leadership never saw the impact because nothing was really centralized. And these are really strong teams that work incredibly hard, but they lacked something very simple, and that was visibility. And without it, you really can't define, I should say, defend those timelines, show your output, or really demonstrate the effort that your team is putting in. And visibility really turns scattered work into clear story leadership. Clear stories that leadership can understand and support. Next, please. So as we unpack the goal setting challenges that are facing teams today, I want to introduce two core blockers. And these show up in every organization I work with, regardless of industry or team size. And the first one on the left is what I call the visibility gap. And this is really when you can't easily answer simple questions like, where are we at on this project? Or what did we complete last quarter? Or what's slowing us down? You know, the work is happening, but the visibility isn't. And the visibility gap really shows up in everyday moments. Someone is always asking for a project update, and it requires, you know, digging through multiple tools to piece together an answer. And you know the team is busy, right? But you cannot easily show what is in progress versus what is stalled. And so when leadership asks what was accomplished last quarter, and you find yourself, you know, building a report from scratch, that's the common scenario. And this leads to misalignment with your leadership. It gets unrecognized output, and you spend hours wasting on pulling together all of these status reports by hand. And so it's without visibility, you know, communication starts to slow, bottlenecks start to hide, and teams really shift from strategic execution to more reaction. And so visibility is foundational. Until you can really see what is happening, you really can't plan or prioritize with confidence. Now, the second blocker on the right is the resource mystery. And this one has a real direct impact on goal setting. Most teams do not have an accurate view of who is overloaded, who has the capacity, and really how effort is distributed across teams. And this makes it impossible to forecast workload or even ensure that goals align with the actual bandwidth. So teams often discover someone is drowning only after quality slips or burnout hits, right? We probably have a few people on the call today that have been through all of this. And this really appears when the team cannot see how that workload is distributed. Two people might be overloaded while others have plenty of space, not because of the skill differences, but because there's no centralized view of who owns what. And without clear capacity insight, those new requests that you're getting get accepted because it's based on instinct rather than data. And overload starts to build very quietly. Now, this also makes it difficult to justify the headcount or even protect the team from unrealistic expectations. So solving workload clarity will give you and your team the foundation to plan effectively and sustainably. And these two blockers don't just disrupt daily work, right? They directly impact your ability to set realistic goals, justify your headcount, and even run your team proactively instead of reactively. Now, the good news is that once you solve for this mystery and this resource clarity, everything else from planning all the way to reporting to alignment starts to become much simpler. And that's what today's session is all about. Next slide, please. Now, visibility issues do cost more than time. You know, when leadership cannot see the workload or the output, performance is really often misread, and the real value of your team's work starts to go unnoticed. And teams complete dozens or hundreds of projects each year, but without visibility, those wins start to fade quickly and are forgotten when it matters the most. Reporting also drains hours and becomes outdated almost immediately. So without a clear shared view of progress, you lose sight of patterns, delays, and approval bottlenecks, and it becomes harder to influence planning or defend the team's capacity. So restoring visibility will bring recognition and clarity and stronger alignment across the organization. Now, the resource mystery has real costs too, right? Burnout builds when just a few people carry too much. Quality starts to drop when overloaded team members start to rush things. And then we know what happens as a result of that, right? Morale starts to suffer when the workload's uneven and the expectations are unclear. And it also impacts planning, right? Without workload visibility, timelines become unrealistic and teams start to commit to work that they can't reasonably support. Now, when you solve this, you gain a much healthier balance, stronger quality, and more predictable delivery. Next, please. So let's go back and do another real quick poll here, just asking what I just described, which blocker affects you most today? And this is going to really help you identify your starting point, right? And really help guide you where you need to start focusing your attention. All right, we got some coming in here. Visibility gap, yep, both. Obviously, yep, they're both always a block. Absolutely. Looks like both is winning right now across the group here. So both followed by visibility gap, followed by resource gap. Yeah. And I think in all of the hundreds of workshops that I've led, like these blockers appear across like every industry, right? And I think we get a lot of very similar answers back. You're not alone in experiencing these, right? The important thing is really just to know, is both of these are fixable, right? That's the good thing. And visibility is really the foundation for solving them. Next slide, please. Okay, one of the biggest misconceptions in project and marketing operations is really this belief that teams can't set strong goals without understanding their baseline. You know, if you don't know how many projects were completed or how long work takes, where bottlenecks occur, or even who's overloaded, then any goal you set is based on what? Guesswork, yes. So in many organizations I work with, goals are built on hope rather than visibility. And leadership's asking for faster turnaround times, but the team can't show where the time's being lost. So what does leadership do? They ask for more projects, right? But the team can't show that current capacity or incoming volume. And this is why teams really struggle with their goal setting. It's not because they don't know what success looks like. It's just because they can't measure where they are today. So visibility must come first. And once you can see the workload and those timelines, those approvals, those bottlenecks, and the capacity, setting those goals stops being stressful, as we all know it can be, right? Especially around this time of the year when everyone's being asked to complete them, and it starts to become strategic. Next, please. So leadership often over ask. And why do they do that? It's because they can't see the operational reality, right? They think in terms of outcomes like revenue, campaigns, organizational goals. What they don't see are things like approval delays, missed handoffs, competing priorities, or even the hours your team invests behind the scenes. Now, if leadership does not have access to operational visibility, they start to fill the gaps with assumptions. They may believe a project takes 2 days when it actually takes 2 weeks because they're not aware of the process or the bottlenecks that exist. So this disconnect creates a lot of tension, right? Without visibility, you can't push back effectively or even show some of those capacity constraints. So visibility is a communication tool. It gives you the evidence needed to align leadership expectations with reality. And then once your leaders see the truth, they'll become far more reasonable and collaborative with you. Next, please. So when teams gain visibility, several discoveries start to appear immediately. They see that approvals take far longer than expected. They see half-finished tasks waiting for feedback. They see uneven workload with even 1 or 2 people that are constantly overloaded. And they see what they believed were Execution issues are usually process or communication issues. So a team I worked with really believed that their designers were slow, right? Everybody that works in marketing has probably said this in the past. But when we visualized the workflow, we discovered that designers spent only about maybe a quarter of their time designing, right? The rest was spent where? Waiting for stakeholders, right? Their bottleneck was approvals, not the execution. Another team actually found that tasks were bouncing between departments without ownership. And then once that was clarified, they cut their turnaround time by nearly 30%. So visibility really starts to uncover the truth. And the truth is almost always solvable. So when you see where time is being lost or where work is piling up, your goals start to become grounded in reality. Next, please. Now, most organizations will jump straight into SMART goals, right? We all know about SMART goals. We probably all had to do them in the past or even going through them right now. And on the surface, SMART goals seem perfect, right? They provide structure and clarity, but really SMART goals fall apart when you do not have visibility into what's happening in your workflow. A SMART goal, like for example, reduce turnaround time by 15%, that checks every box, right? But it sits on a major flaw. If you do not know your current turnaround time or where delays occur or how long approvals take, that goal is not achievable or measurable. It just becomes a wild guess. So teams that set SMART goals based on what sounds reasonable instead of what's supported by data, they try to improve performance without understanding the root causes. And that's why SMART goals are often feel discouraging, right? The framework's not the issue, the lack of visibility is. And SMART goals work when it is supported by visibility. And without that foundation, that core, they can't stand on their own. So I want to take you over to the right side and talk about something that works a little bit better sometimes. It's called the impact framework. And it really solves for the weaknesses of traditional SMART goals. And impact stands for inspiring, meaningful, possible, actionable, celebrated, and transparent. So if we think about that, like a goal should be inspiring, right? So the team understands the bigger purpose. It should always be meaningful because it has to connect to some real outcomes. Remember what leadership was thinking? They're thinking about outcomes. It should also be possible because you have data to support it. It should be actionable because you know the steps that are needed. It should be celebrated so progress feels motivating, and it also has to be transparent so anyone can track it. So visibility really sits at the center of every piece of this framework. You cannot inspire or align your team without clarity. You cannot make a goal possible without a baseline. You cannot make it actionable without understanding the bottlenecks. And transparency requires, we've been talking about this all day, right? Visibility. So impact goals really bring that humanity into the goal setting, and they really connect the work to purpose to create alignment and really give your teams a goal that they can actually believe in. Next, please. So here's an example of how impact transforms goals. So if we look on the left side, a SMART goal like reduce turnaround time by 15% looks pretty structured, right? But it does not explain the purpose or the root cause or how the goal connects to broader outcomes. Now, if we do the opposite and look at the impact version, here now we're focusing on delivering enrollment campaigns 1 week faster so they launch during peak student decision periods by identifying bottlenecks and rebalancing workload. Now, this version really tells a story, right, that leadership cares about and probably that the team will understand. And it also becomes inspiring because it ties those outcomes that matter, right? It becomes possible because it's backed by data. It becomes actionable because you can see what needs to change. And it becomes transparent because you can track progress in the workflow. So this is really how visibility can transform the quality of your goals. Next, please. Now let me introduce another chart here, a model, if you will. It's called the three-level alignment model. And this really helps ensure that your goals start to resonate with leadership, right? And teams really think in task and projects. That's just the nature of things, right? Leadership thinks in, we talked about this, outcomes and impact. So When these two languages don't connect, that's where goals start to fall flat. Now, level 3 is operational work. And this is where the teams live, right? Improving turnaround time, balancing the workload, clarifying approvals. Level 2 is that strategic contribution. And this really explains why your operational goal matters. And then if we look at level 1, this is the organizational outcome, and this is where leadership focuses their time, right? So the mistake that many teams make is really communicating level 3 goals to leaders who are listening for level 2 and level 1. So when you start to shift your language up the model, leaders start to immediately see the strategic value behind your work. Next, please. So I want to do and introduce you to the so that test. And this is one of the simplest tools for elevating your goals. You take an operational goal and you complete the sentence, we do this so that. And then you do that until you reach some kind of a business outcome. So for example, we want to reduce approval delays so that work flows faster. Faster flow so that campaigns launch on time, right? On-time launches so that enrollment targets are met, for example, right? There's one example. I'll give you another example. We want to balance workload so that no one is over 40 hours a week, right? We want balanced workload so that our strongest people do not burn out. We want to prevent burnout so that quality stays high and we avoid turnover. Here's another one. We want high quality and low turnover so that we increase on-time completion rates across the organization. See how simple that is? You can take almost any operational goal and ladder it up using this test. And it really turns project management language into more business language and really starts to strengthen your influence with your leadership team. So, next slide, please. Let's do a little interactive session with you. I want you to think about one of your 2026 goals that you might be working on, or you might have already completed it, right? And let's mentally run it through the so that test as I continue today. And if you want, feel free to share one of your goals and ladder it up using so that statements. Put it in the chat. We'll take a look at it and use them as some examples. But this simple exercise is really going to change the way that you communicate with your leadership, and it's going to dramatically increase your influence inside the organization. So do that so that test and think about that through the rest of the presentation and put them in the chat. All right, next slide, please. So when teams set goals, I think one of the hardest steps is really deciding what to measure, right? High performing teams simplify this by focusing on 3 buckets: the output, the efficiency, and capacity, right? And each one tells a different part of the story. Output metrics show kind of what you are producing, and it really gives leadership a clear view of the volume your team manages. Efficiency metrics reveal where the time is being lost and where processes need improvement. And then the capacity metrics show whether you have the bandwidth to meet demand and help protect your team from burnout. And when you start to track all 3 of these together, you really get a full picture of how the work flows. You start to see what's getting done, how well it moves, and really whether your team can start to sustain that load. It really becomes the foundation for stronger planning as you move into 2026. Patty says she's unable to hear. Connor, can you do a check on here and make sure that we're still on voice?
Yeah, I can hear you good, and hopefully,
All the
Patty,
participants are saying that the participants are saying they're unable to hear. Is there a mute button on by accident?
There's not. Yeah, we're getting, folks are saying that they can hear. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for the thumbs up. All right. Thank you, everyone, for the thumbs up. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear us, and it looks like there are people that can hear us. So thank you, everybody, for giving us a thumbs up. For those that are unable to hear, my apologies. Hopefully, it's just a technical issue and it's resolved very quickly. But everyone is confirming that they can hear. So thank you very much. All right. Let's continue. So next slide, please, Connor. Sorry, I had to stop there real quick and just make sure everybody was everyone was in order. And we're going to have this as a leave behind as well, everyone. So you'll be able to go through it at your convenience if you are having some technical issues as well. So one of the metric insights that immediately changes how teams work is really understanding the difference between leading and lagging indicators. I think we've all heard of these two terms, right? Most organizations really rely almost entirely on lagging indicators. And these include, for example, like whether a campaign launched on time, whether a project was delivered, how many tasks were completed. Now, those matter, but lagging indicators only tell you what already happened, right? And at that point, it's usually too late to intervene. So leading indicators will actually predict whether the work will stay on track. So they show that risk early, and that's what you're looking for, right? For example, if a kickoff is delayed by several days, like that's a signal the entire timeline is at risk. Or if a task sits in an approval for more than a few days, what will that suggest? Well, it suggests that the turnaround time is going to slip. And if one team member hits really high allocation midweek, what's that going to signal? We talked about this earlier. That's going to signal overload and burnout, right? So high performing teams track leading indicators because they reveal problems well before they become a crisis. And when you start to track both leading and lagging indicators together, you start to shift from more reactive management to proactive leadership and prevent issues instead of reacting to them. Next slide, please. So the balanced visibility dashboard is kind of one of those most important tools for, I think, a modern project and marketing operations team. What it's going to do is it's going to bring output, efficiency, and capacity, what we just talked about, right? It's going to bring all of that together in a real-time view of what's happening across your team. And a really strong dashboard will show things like delivered work, where time's being spent or lost, right? Who's overloaded or who's underutilized. If you look at all three of those together, you'll start to really understand the full story behind your performance. Now, you might see that output is strong, but efficiency is dropping because the approvals are taking too long, right? I gave you that example earlier. Or that deadlines look on track, but maybe one team member is carrying twice the workload. So this level of visibility is going to help you remove that guesswork. And it supports that data-driven conversation with your leadership as well, right? And it's going to help you prioritize more intelligently as you plan for 2026 too. Next, please. So now that we've covered the frameworks, I'm going to actually hand it over to Connor, and Connor's going to really show you what visibility looks like in practice. Workzone is really designed to solve this visibility gap that we've been talking about today, and the resource mystery as well, because it does give you a real clear, centralized view of your work, your people, and your priorities, if you will. And in this demonstration, Connor's going to walk you through kind of how Workzone displays things like project status, highlights those bottlenecks, gives you that visual capacity view, and really simplify your goal tracking as well. And the goal is not just to show software features, right? We're not here for that today. It's really to show how a system like Workzone will help transform your ability to really plan with confidence and communicate clearly with your leadership. And as we move through the demo, just kind of imagine and think about maybe how different your 2026 planning process would be and feel with this type of level of visibility every day as well. So that being said, Connor, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Shannon. Hi everyone, Connor with Workzone here. I'm one of the product specialists, and I'm excited to show you a quick demo of Workzone and show you how a tool like Workzone can address the visibility gap and the resource gap. So to start, I'm here in our projects dashboard, and with just a click, I'm able to get a sense of where all of our projects stand. I can see each project's title, if it's on time or not. I'm getting some visual notifications here letting me know that things are falling off track and need attention. Percent complete shows me how far along each project is. I know who's overseeing each project, and of course the timeline that we're working with. Now from here, projects expand into those tasks that folks are actually completing at the ground level. You will notice here that this task happens to be late, and Workzone is going to automatically trigger a notification to me to keep me in the loop, right? So doing some of that proactive reach out so that team members don't have to chase each other down. Now, something else that happens as the process is taking place is the next person in the chain in this project will be notified. In this case, Annie, when I mark my task as complete, Workzone gives Annie a heads up.
Mhm.
Again, just proactively triggering that notification so that the legwork doesn't have to happen. And then you have the timeline here for each individual task: start date, end date, duration, and the work column. And so this work column is actually where Workzone is going to gather all of the estimated work hours assigned to each user, and then roll that up into a variety of different reports that help you manage your resources. And we'll take a look at them firsthand in just a few minutes. A few other features here that can be really helpful in Workzone is centralizing your review process, right? One of the holdups that Shannon talked about was reviews, and it's not the time going into the design, it's the holdup of the reviews that are out. They get lost in the shuffle. They're not the main priority for the stakeholder or the client. So it's easy to lose sight of them, especially when there's other work at hand. So Workzone has some really nifty features here that can ensure both parties are automatically notified and reminded about those reviews. And so I'm going to go ahead and just pull a file in from my desktop. And there we go. And so from here, I'm able to request approval both of my team members and also external collaborators like a stakeholder. They don't even need to be a user of Workzone for us to facilitate this approval process and track this approval process here in Workzone. So I would just enter their first name, last name, and their email address, and they would then receive this. And actually, I have a few saved here. So I'll go ahead and send that off. And everyone that I triggered that to would automatically get an email, and you'll see the status here telling us that we're still waiting on approval for Annie and from Jim. Now, when this approval status is updated, when Annie or Jim responds, this approval status, of course, would show as they've approved or not approved, but it's also going to trigger me a notification back letting me know that they have approved. Additionally, Workzone is going to ensure that if these folks don't respond by the date that I set, Workzone is going to automatically trigger them a reminder email. So hopefully that can help address, that approval sitting for too long. Now that's a really quick overview here of what projects could look like in our projects dashboard. And so this is already giving you full visibility across your project portfolio. But Workzone is going to take it a step further and generate some useful reporting. So this project dashboard can address that visibility gap. And then as we get into the reporting, we'll take a look now at addressing the resource gap. So as mentioned, that work column in the projects module collects all of the estimated work assigned to your team members, right? So this is showing the amount of hours assigned daily across my team. And I'm very quickly able to balance my workload here, see who's assigned too much, who might not be assigned enough. And I can even rebalance my workload here. So let's take a look. So Trevor is not assigned any work tomorrow, so maybe I just reassign this 4-hour task to Trevor, and that takes some of the work off my plate, and I've already better balanced my workload. Now, in addition to just balancing your workload here, this can also be a really useful view to decide if you have the bandwidth to take on more work, right? Shannon mentioned that when requests come in or when a executive or stakeholder asks for us to complete a project for them, we want to take that work on, right? And it's very common for teams to take that work on without understanding what their bandwidth is, and that's where you can really get into some hot water. So taking a look at this before you decide to take on more work, could really help you protect your team from that situation, right? I might say, well, we're pretty overloaded through the end of the year, but come early January, we could take this project on.
Yeah, and that ties right into, Connor, what we just talked about on a slide before this, right? We talked about lagging and leading indicators, right? So
Mhm.
if you guys all think about leading indicators, I mean, showing risk early is successful, mitigation of those leading indicators. So having this type of a visual where you can see everyone's workload and where there's going to be potential burnout, or being able to redistribute work so that everybody, is in a much more favorable position in terms of work getting done, like that ties right into it. So what a fantastic view. And I love how you have all the different colors on the dashboard as well to just really quickly see who's going to potentially be burned out.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're planning, you're just ensuring that your team's not redlining, right? That's huge. And something we've heard from customers in the past is that this single report has helped them grow their headcount because it just gives you simple data to show to leadership, hey, we're redlining. We could take on more projects, but we're going to need the resources.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'll share just a few other reports that can show how Workzone can address the visibility and resource gap. Now, just from a 30,000 foot view, sometimes you need some simple, just a simple overview of where projects stand. So we have reports like our status by project. This is a very popular report to share with leadership. These are the projects taking place. Very quickly, you can see what's on track, what's not, and what needs attention. Now, this is definitely a popular report to share with leadership. Another one that's really popular is our custom dashboards. So this allows you to actually custom build dashboards from our library of graphs and reports. So I've created this executive dashboard and I've added just the things that I want the executives to see, or what the executives want, or what leadership wants, right? Maybe I'm taking this to a board meeting, but this makes this information very easy to digest, right? This is where all of our projects stand. 64% of them are on time, 29% are at risk, and 7% or one project has fallen behind. And without getting into each one of these graphs, the point is that you're able to create these dashboards from our very robust library of reports and graphs. So for example, I could easily add a new one here. I'm just going to grab a random one and choose the format that I want this graph to be in. And then I'll just add that report. It's going to show up down here at the bottom. And of course, I can move it around to where I'd like it to show. And you can even resize them as well. So that's a really quick overview of how a tool like Workzone can help address that visibility and the resource gap. Shannon, anything that I missed here in this short demo that you'd like me to show?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I think that's what you showed, at least on the first screen too, like that ties right into this whole balance visibility dashboard, guys, right? And we talked about how that's like one of the most important tools for modern project market organization teams, like being able to see things like the output and efficiency and capacity, like all of that together in one view, and seeing that across your team, like that's where you need to get to with your leadership so they start to understand the full picture. And then when I gave you that story earlier, when we started the webinar this morning, and how long it took someone to gather all of the data together to just answer a question to their leadership, and how long that took them, and all the different tools that had to go across. I mean, I think what Connor, you just showed with that, those custom dashboards, I mean, you did it in one click. So if all the information is being stored in Workzone, I'm assuming that you can just, create these dashboards, and then if your leadership team asks for a specific data point or how are you doing, like this is it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
Workzone's automatically building this stuff for you, right? And then you're just custom adding exactly what you need to this dashboard.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, an eye opener for me. I didn't realize that it could do everything that you showed today. So really appreciate you walking through it and showing us really how it ties into this visibility dashboard and burnout and all those things that we talked about today. So thank you very much.
Hey, you got it. I'll go ahead and bring up our slide deck here.
Appreciate it. We got just a couple slides left, guys, so we'll dive back in.
All right.
The next one, please. There we go. Perfect. So most annual goals, guys, fail really long before the year ends, right? In many cases, they fail by, I'd say, February or March, as sad as that sounds. But annual planning really only happens once, right? And then the goals start to do what? They start to go quiet. So teams start to move into, execution mode, priorities start to shift, all these new requests start coming in, right? And before long, the goals that you set in January are really no longer reflective of the reality of the work. We've all probably been through that situation, right? And so the solution is not more planning meetings. No one likes more meetings, right? It's really adopting more of a that keeps your goals visible and relevant. So quarterly reviews can really create those checkpoints where you start to assess what worked, what did not, what needs to change, and what needs to stop. And leadership, and then the team stays grounded in that real data. So these quarterly reviews are going to help you stay flexible, honest, and really committed to the goals that still make sense. And this whole quarterly review framework is going to be built around 4 simple questions. What happened? What did we learn? What changed? Or what changes, I should say? And what is our plan for next quarter? And so this structure keeps kind of that conversation real clear and focused on the improvement and not just on that judgment. And if you pair this with that traffic light system or a traffic light system that Connor showed, right, on that dashboard with like a green, and I think you had a yellow on there, Connor, and there's probably even red. So, green means it's on track, yellow means something's at risk, and red means, hey, I need to do something, I need to intervene here. And in a lot of cases, many think that the goal is to have all green. Well, the goal is not to have all green, right? The goal is just that early awareness. So you can start to make some of those adjustments before those problems start to escalate. And this system here is really going to help your team stay aligned and stay healthy and hopefully stay effective all year long. Next slide, please. So as we close, I want to leave you with just a really simple action plan, guys. Here's what I want you to do. This week, I want you to complete a visibility audit, right? Can you answer where each project stands in under a minute? Do you know who is overloaded? Can you show your leadership your output for the last quarter real quickly, like Connor did in a single click over there? If not, start there, right? Then take it to this month. Build your visibility foundation, centralize your work, begin tracking the workload, and really run your first so that test on one of your goals, right? And then if we look at it a little bit wider, let's talk about this quarter. This quarter, prove the value, right? Build your balanced dashboard, run your first quarterly review, and start to share those snapshots of the output, efficiency, and capacity with leadership. And I just learned yesterday that, Connor, you guys at Workzone actually started to introduce a free trial, right? So now, yes, guys, if you want to try Workzone and you're not using Workzone right now, you can go to workzone.com, sign up for a free trial, and try some of this stuff yourself. Set up your projects and your tasks, start to create your goals, start to get other people from other teams involved so they all have that visibility that we talked about today, right? So here's your opportunity to try it firsthand. So visibility, isn't just a reporting tool. It's really going to start to empower your team, and it's going to strengthen all of your decision making, and it's going to start to make you more aligned with your leadership. And if you want help identifying your biggest visibility gaps, book a workflow visibility session with Workzone. I know, Connor, you guys give demos all the time to customers and potential customers, and they can show you exactly how to accomplish what we talked about today. Next slide, please. All right, so you guys have been waiting for this the entire presentation, I can tell, right? Everybody's like, ooh, I just can't wait till we get to this part. So we're gonna do it, guys. we're going to give 5, this is completely random. We're going to give 5 lucky winners the opportunity to win a $100 Amazon gift card right now, and you'll probably use it for yourself or maybe buy someone that you love a gift for Christmas, but we're going to do it right now. I'm going to pull up the list of attendees here, and let me pick a random 5. Let's see if I can get the entire list. All right, I got the entire list. I'm going to go completely random here, guys, and then you can tell me if you're on the call today. Anna Glenn, are you on the call? Feel free to raise your hand or give me a thumbs up. All right, Anna Glenn, she's number 1. Anna, congratulations on your gift card. All right, next one down the list we're going to go to is Elizabeth Nelson on the call today. Elizabeth, raise your hand. All right, Elizabeth, you're number 2. You just won a $100 gift card. How about Kim Motz? Kim Motz, are you on the call today? Kim Motz, raise your hand. I don't see Kim's hand coming up. Kim, are you on the call? Kim could be one of those that maybe joined a little late and may not hear. So let's keep a note, if you don't mind, on Kim Motz. If Kim Motz does not claim her prize, guys, we'll go through the list and pick another random person, okay? How about, let's go to the next person, which is, how about Stacy Lowe? Stacy, are you on the call today? Stacy raised her hand. All right. Is that number 4? We have one more. That's number 4? All right, we have one more left. How about we pick, let's go through the list here. How about Jen Gustafson? Jed Gustafson, are you on the call today? Raise your hand if you are, Jed. Jed's on. All right, guys, that's all 5. You guys all won a $100 Amazon e-gift card. We'll be sending those gift cards to you to the address, the email address that you registered with. So please make sure that the email address that you register with is the correct email address so that you get your e-gift cards. Congratulations, everyone. All right, next slide, please. I think we have a little bit of time left today, Connor, so sure. Let's open it up for questions and see if anyone has some questions that have come in or address those questions.
A few questions did come in. I've been answering a few in the chat as well. If we do not get to your question, we will certainly be reviewing those questions after the webinar, and we will follow up with some answers for you. A question that came in, I'll go ahead and just read this to you, Shannon.
Sure.
How do we get leadership to stop setting goals that do not match the reality of how long our work actually takes?
Yeah, I think this goes back to what we talked about earlier, right? Like most of the time, that gap that we talked about from visibility, most of the time, I think the gap comes from visibility, right? Not intention. And so I think leaders, usually aren't seeing kind of what happens between that whole idea and that final result. So, they might see the campaign go live, but what they don't see are things like the handoffs or the approvals or the waiting or the bottlenecks that slow everything down, right? So once you start to actually show them the workflow and where time's being lost, like that whole conversation shifts and it stops being kind of the we need more time and becomes like, here's actually what's happening behind the scenes. And so when everybody's finally looking at the same picture, then those goals just start to be like a little bit more realistic, if you will.
All right, so let's see, we still have time for a few more. Next question, if we did not have much historical data, how do we start setting better goals for 2026 without guessing?
Yeah, I don't think you need years of data to start that, right? You just kind of need a baseline. So even tracking your next few weeks is going to show you a lot. Like you'll start seeing how long approvals take or where work's getting stuck and how much volume your team's actually handling. And really from there, you can start to move away from goals that sound really good on paper and start to create goals that are a little bit more doable. And that's really the whole point of what I shared earlier with impact goals, right? They're built on what's real right now, not what we hope is true. And so that little data can really make that planning feel way less stressful and a lot more grounded.
All right, next question. How do you handle conflicting priorities when you get multiple asks from different leaders?
Great question. I think one of the ways is just, I think when multiple leaders come in with like those urgent requests, like everything sounds like a priority, right? And so without that visibility, the team's really going to end up kind of switching things around. They'll be working overtime and working nights, or they'll be burning out like we talked about, right? But what changes that dynamic, I think, is really just being able to put like the work on the table, right? When you can start to show, your current workload, what's already committed, and what will be delayed if something new comes in, like the conversation just becomes more rational, right? So instead of saying no, you're really asking leaders to make a trade-off. Like I'll often say, can we absolutely take this on? Like here, if we can, then here's what we would replace. Here is what I would replace or delay, right? Does this still make sense? And then most leaders really appreciate being included in that decision, and it just naturally forces kind of prioritization at that leadership level instead of pushing it down to the team. So I think visibility kind of turns some of those conflicting priorities into more shared decisions instead of that silent overload, if you will.
Awesome. Another question here. This one is in regards to a Workzone functionality. So I'll take this one, Shannon.
Perfect.
Taffy said, I love the custom tags you can assign to projects. I use them to provide a quick status update. Would be amazing if you could also filter by those tags. Well, good news, Taffy, you can actually filter by those tags. So I'll quickly show you here in my Workzone site. Let's see. So here in the projects module, I don't have many tags applied here, but I do have this 2026 marketing initiative tag there. So I'll go ahead and apply a filter. Now to use this tags filter, you'll need to add a filter, and then you have the tags option listed here, which allows you to select one or several of those tags. And so I only have that one project flagged, I believe, but there you go. Now I've created a 2026 marketing initiative view, and I could pull this up very easily at any point with that tag. So Taffy, hopefully that was helpful for you. Excited to show another useful Workzone feature today.
Yeah, Patty also asked Connor, with regards to those tags, can they be assigned to tasks too? She's like, I wish we could assign to tasks too.
So we don't have task tags at this time. They are a project level feature. Fantastic suggestion though, Patty, is certainly something that we'll pass along to our development team for consideration.
Okay. Daniela, I want to address your question too. You talked about working in silos. You talked about workload views, but just to address the general question in silos, like, working in silos is common, right? Especially in a lot of organizations that grow really quickly or where teams are kind of built around functions. And we all know that when work lives in silos, like everybody's always looking at their own plate, but no one's seeing kind of that full picture. So the first step there is to just don't break the silos overnight, right? It's just what we talked about today, just create that shared view of the work, right? So even if teams like stay structured the same way, you can still roll up projects and tasks and hours into one place and kind of look at that workload across the whole group. And that's really where patterns start to show up, right? So those types of things also help in like your hiring conversation. So saying things like, we need another person is really a hard sell, but when you can start to show that the team has been operating at or capacity for like a number of months, like the work keeps getting delayed and that high value work's like getting deprioritized, like you could really start to make a business case at that point. So, very common, but there's some things that you can do to work around that to get away from that framework of siloed environment, if you will. Looks like there was another question that came on reports, and a question around task categories. Connor, can you run reports based on tags? That was a question that came up by Janine.
Yeah, so tags is somewhat of a new feature to Workzone. While it is available in some reports, it's not available in the majority of reports at this time. So it's really mostly something that's leveraged in the projects module. One of the differences between tags and our categories feature, which is something that you're going to see in pretty much every report, is that tags allow you to apply more than one tag per project per line. So there's some trade-offs with that. But the direct answer is, while it's only available in a few reports now, it's something that we are continuing to build out in our other reports. So a yes and no answer for you today. Cool. Let's take a look at a few more here.
I saw one just came up that said, our organization is suffering from being a bit too granular at the executive levels. At what level of output should leadership be involved, hours per day, per week, per month, per quarter? I think that comes up. Who was that that asked that question? Stacy? Yeah, Stacy. I mean, that comes up a lot, right? It usually means that leadership cares and wants to make those good decisions, right? But they're just being pulled too far into the weeds on a lot of things, right? So at that executive level, like hours per day or per week are usually a little bit too granular for them. And that level of detail is important for managers that are running the work, but not really for leaders that are setting that direction. I think what leadership really needs is more of a trend view, like not a timesheet, right? So a good rule of thumb is monthly and quarterly output and capacity, like how many projects or campaigns are moving, you know, where things are slowing down, whether demand is increasing or flattening, and really whether the team is consistently operating above that capacity. And then when leaders, you know, really are staying focused on those patterns and those trade-offs instead of those individual hours, they start to get, you know, a little better signal with less of that noise, right? They can still dig deeper when something looks off, but they don't really need to live there, right? You know, visibility works best, I think, when everyone's looking at that just right level of detail for or based on those decisions that they're responsible for. Well, it looks like we're pushing up against time here, Connor. So if you wouldn't mind pulling back the presentation, I will do a final thank you for everyone. I really want to thank you for spending all of your time with us today. I really appreciate all the engagement that we had today and all of the thought that you put into really hopefully strengthening how your teams plan and measure success. A huge thank you to Connor for the demo walkthrough today and giving us some more insights into Workzone. Don't forget, guys, your free trial is available. Go to workzone.com, try it out, try to put in your projects and your tasks, assign people, get that visibility that we talked about today, bring all of these concepts to life. And we hope that these insights give you some real clarity and confidence as you move in towards your 2026 goals. Thank you, everyone. Have a great holiday season and a happy new year. Thanks for joining and have a great rest of the week.